Well, here we are. It's Friday, and it's time for the weekly video. A lot has been going on in the auction world in the last week. The Sotheby's has been getting busy on their sales. I talked to Rick at Doyle's this week. They're getting busy. They'll have all of their sale up in the next day or so online. There's some nice things as always. Christie's has got their things up. But one of the things that we added this week onto the Bidamount site, in the book section, we added 2 more catalogs. So as you all know, you come over to the homepage on bidamount.com, scroll down to the red box, click that, it'll bring you over here. And the first 2 catalogs you'll come to in the top row. The most recent items are always in the top row, or the first 2 rows. Sometimes we do a bunch of them, but the 2 Sotheby's auctions, one on bronzes and their important Chinese works of art sale. We also added a book on China trade porcelain, which I think you'll find interesting, and a book on Amari ware, Arita ware and pottery and Japanese art in general that are in the Met. These are both, here's the Japanese book on the Gary collection. Many of you may have this, but it's been out of print for a while. It was published in 1989. It's profusely illustrated, lots of paintings, pottery from all periods, great samples, some familiar export pieces that you've seen. It's brilliantly written, as you might expect, and it's really worth going through. And you'll notice there was Oliver Impey, who was the senior assistant at the Ashmolean, was involved with the production of this book, and he wrote, of course, the famous book on Japanese Amari, and he's a legend on this material. He knows it better than he knew it better than probably anybody. But there's a very nice acknowledgement in the front, and then a load of history that goes all the way back to the Heian period, talk about scrolls and so forth, and then they get into the porcelain and pottery, which there's an enormous amount of. If you're learning about Japanese porcelain and pottery, you want to go through this book. It's really worth reading. It's very informative, and they have great examples in here from the collection at the Met. All right, it's absolutely super. You know, the museums these days, some of them don't talk too much about the Japanese collection because everybody's interested in the Chinese. Well, you should change that. Get interested. The Japanese stuff is equally as good, and if you're a collector, it is a relative bargain compared to the Chinese material. All right, and if you are interested in Chinese and export wares, which are also a relative bargain on the market today, this is a good book to look at. China Trade Porcelain: Patterns of Exchange by Claire Le Corbière. And this was a great book that came out in 1972 or 3, but has a lot of history in the front of it. I think you'll like it. It's very well illustrated, but in-depth look at the China trade, a lot of the things you'll see things in there that we've talked about, and there's a lot of stuff in here that we've never talked about, which is quite interesting. And it's, as like I said, it was very well illustrated. Lots of information, lots of rare pieces, and some pieces that you've seen. You got the VOC plates here. This is all the early China trade to Europe, and they go right up through into the early 19th century. So it's a terrific book, and you'll see some very familiar looking pieces in here. And then the other books are, of course, Power and Conquest, the Forging of Empire. This was a Sotheby's catalog on ancient bronzes, and I went through this the other day. It was so well done. This book is absolutely beautifully done, beautifully presented. They have a lot of information. There's a lot of write-ups in here. If you're interested in ancient bronzes, their history, uses, how they were marked, and the pictures enlarged nicely. You get a good sense of the patinas, and you can examine the details of the castings, all that stuff. Very, very interesting books. And if you feel like it, bid on something. That's the idea, right? You want to buy and build up your collection. And then over on this one is important Chinese works of art, and this is this sale has about 400 lots in it. It's a pretty big sale. A lot of things in the high end, a lot of things that are more moderately priced, under 10 or 20,000. I think there may be even a few things that'll be under 5,000. But you have the cover lots, of course. You have this fabulous 18th century enameled vase that's done like cloisonne, which was a very popular thing among the folks in the court. They love this stuff, very cleverly done. And then there's this ribbed Kangxi jar, which are one of these iconic pieces that turn up every once in a while. This one, as I recall it came out of one of the big collections. I forget who it was. But at any rate, it's worth reading through this. There's some very good illustrations in here, as always, good descriptions. And it's going to be sort of a test of the market. All these auctions are going to be a test of the market because of everything that's going on right now in the world. So it'll be China, the mainland Chinese economy is having their problems, as we all know. They're heading into they're absolutely in a recession at this point, and they're I think being a little careful with letting currency out of the country. I think we may be seeing some of that, and I think it's reflective in what we're seeing in these sales. Not that they're not nice things, but I don't think the sales are as robust as they have been in a couple of years ago. Not like that. So we'll see what happens. All right. The other things I wanted to mention was for the global page users, this week's video is up, and we talk a little bit about those two vases right here. A really elegant, wonderful, big pair. These things are 16 or 18 inches tall, rose mandarin vases with loads of gilding, superbly detailed. And do check that out for those of you who subscribe. And the other thing I wanted to add was that on the auction results page, on the global pages, we've put a permalink in with a photograph to the Tibor collection that the Stair Gallery did yesterday. This was a really good sale, a lot of good things, very rare items, and I think we're gonna leave that there for a good time because there's a good reference material for getting pricing on things when you're looking at something online. If it's really interesting, good export, you might find a similar example in the Tibor collection. And these are just some of the lots. This is the page that it'll bring you to when you click on the link with all the prices realized. But there were some real nice things in there, and there were some things that sold for modest amounts of money. Like this very nice China trade export bottle. Stair doesn't often date things. Sometimes they leave them out. They might say Qing Dynasty or Ming or something, but often they don't. So it might, to those of you that haven't been collecting for a long time, you might wonder, well, how old is it? All right, and I don't know why they don't bother putting it in, because they could certainly put in a range. It wouldn't take them any time to do it. So I'm not sure what the reason for the vagueness in dating goes. But at any rate, this was a heck of a nice bottle. Late 18th to very, very early 19th century China trade ware. They, of course, did these in a variety of qualities. Well, this is about as good as they get. This is a really fine example. There's some dirt and grunge on the bottom. That looks like just legitimate old dirt. And very nicely done. And you got this quasi little garlic neck here on the top rather than a big one. It's very almost flat. But that's what it is. This jar has, I recall, had a hairline in the bottom. There it is, which might have held the price back a little bit. But I don't think $700 for this was any sort of a heavy price. I think this was a really, really fine vase. It's about 9 inches tall. It's a guglet or a bottle, but superb decorative quality on it. And then there was this. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago when we posted it on the front page of Bidamount for the update for the global pages, was this cup. Some of you may remember it. And I commented on it in a couple of videos, and I thought, gee, this is one heck of a rare cup. It's designed by, the design is attributed to Cornelis Pronk. Certainly looks like his work. And it had been restored, but they didn't say how much had been restored. The estimate was absurdly low. If you've been collecting 18th century Chinese export wares or interested in it, you've seen samples of this cup before. They were sent mostly to Holland, but absolutely rare as could be. And it went for $4,250 restored. All right. The other piece that took off was this, and this was artificially low on the estimate. I'm not sure. I think that's just an indication of where the reserve was, but it was estimated at $800 to $1,200. This is one of those Famille Rose porcelain Bombay form commodes, French commodes, that has the holes in the top for putting bulbs for planting, getting bulbs started in here. Very nicely done. Went for $8,000, which indicates how rare these things are. They've always been rare, though. They were bringing thousands of dollars in the 90s also. And then the spiral twist claret jug, Kangxi period, a very good example. And these are well known. This is a form that was quite popular in Europe there for the table. Beautifully done, nice cobalt decoration on this. But this was a good example. Had a little fritting around the mouth at the top, but that was about it. And ended up doing very well. It brought $4,750. It's not an unusual size. It's 8 inches tall, which is about what most of them are. But it really took off because typically these sell for $2,500 to $3,000, $3,500, somewhere in there. This one went for $4,750 plus the buyer's premium. So it was a very strong price. And then this, and you may recognize this because it's very similar to that, and it is a kissing cousin of the Japanese example that's on the cover of the Gary collection at the Met. I think this one is actually in a way a little bit nicer because I like the Fu Lion on top better. It's got a very nice looking Fu Lion on the top of it seated, and the exterior decoration is very strong, very vibrant. This is a late 17th century piece. And I commented on it a couple of weeks ago because I on the global video we do, because on the global video we talk about things that are coming up to let users know, just so you're wondering what the difference is between those. The videos that go on the global pages each week, the one that we do for that page every week, are for things that we've spotted during the week to give people a heads up to, sort of a preview of what to expect when they go through the pages. And I think I had mentioned that this was a very nice 17th century example, and went for $1,800 on a $700 to $900 estimate. But the estimate was I think I commented on it. It was artificially low. I thought the estimate should have been $1,200 to $1,500 or $1,600, something like that, perhaps more realistic. And then this is a very rare plate in this condition. It's a fisherman plate, 18th century. It's got this wonderful grisaille black decoration, all hand done here. Look at all the work that went in there, all the thousands of little brush strokes. And what was really super about this plate was its condition. The Tibor collection was mostly pieces, prime examples, and a good look to them. And you'll notice on here there's hardly any wear to the red that's outlining the gold. The gold is all intact. The flowers are all intact. All of the grisaille decoration is without wear. Not even the fishing rod has a cut through it. Nothing. So it was a really prime example and in superb condition, and $600 to $800 estimate, which was low. Should have been a couple of $1,000 to $3,000. Ended up going for $6,000 though. That was a very good price. But if you've been looking for these are rare, and if you're a collector and you've been looking for one in perfect condition, you're gonna bet your lungs on this one. That's all there is to it. But there were some very good buys for people that aren't in a position to spend thousands of dollars at auctions. There was a group of 6 Blancpain Buddhistic lyings, late 19th and a little bit into the early Republic period. But there were 6 of them, and the whole lot went for $200. Now, and that was the opening bid. I had a single bid, $200. Now, one of them had a little repair to it and things like that, but these are nice examples, and you got a sort of like an instant collection of Fu Lions. The Tibors love Fu Lions. There were many lots of Fu Lions in the sale, and a couple of them brought a little bit more than this, but I thought this was a particularly reasonable buy for the person, but collecting on a budget, that kind of thing, and which is completely fine, and you still have opportunities, but as always, you got to leave bids. And then this was at Eldred's, 4 of these framed, ready to go, 1800s pith painting, probably around 1850 to 1870. but beautifully done. Really nice quality. A little bit of toning to the paper, it looks like, to the pith, but the quality of the work was very good. And these vase profiles with vases coming out of them, you often see on the interiors of the center of plates, especially during the Qin period. And here they are. And there were 4 of these, all framed, ready to go. The backs look fine. Here are 2 more. And somebody picked up all 4 of them for $300, which is, you do the math. It's, $80 a piece, something like that. Very, very reasonable. And the little buyer's premium. And these wouldn't be hard to ship. The sizes, the images are all 11 by 7, which is the standard, sort of the standard leaf size that these came in when they were shipped out of China from Canton. They were done in books, and people would take the books apart and frame them. And there you go. All right, now what else was going on? Oh, on eBay, they had some pretty good results. First off, I had last week at the end of the video, I had mentioned this painting because I just thought it was such a great watercolor, beautifully done, nice detail, all framed, ready to go. Here's the script down the peach flowers down in the corner. It's not a butterfly called a peach. It's the flowers that they're talking about, peach blossoms, and they threw a butterfly in, which was meticulously done. And somebody, I think one of you might have done it because I mentioned it, and I said, see if you take an offer, $400 or $500, $450, something like that, and look within the next morning, the next day or so, I noticed it was gone. And I was hoping one of you bought it because this is a gem of a little picture, and it's you're getting a wonderful watercolor in a frame that probably cost around $300 or $400. So there's no downside to buying that. That was a good thing. And then this was that very attractive, probably 18th century, possibly early 19th century piece of Japanese Arita ware, but very unusually colored. This green is very unusual. And the porcelain, the way it's done, this is very fine porcelain, almost looks like Kakeemon porcelain. Very, very fine, very, very white. And I thought this was very, very good example. Probably 18th century. They sort of said 18th or 19th, but it looks 18th century to me. But regardless, it went for $192.50, which I think was very reasonable. This was not a huge plate. I think it was 8 inches in diameter or something, or 7 inches in diameter. 194 millimeters, so that's 19 centimeters, so that's 7 3/4 inches. There you go. All right. Yeah, but that was a pretty plate. Very, very pretty. And then moseying along over here, there was this Nyonya Straits, or Perenican Straits, cup and saucer, early 20th century. Very well-known pattern. This pattern with the sort of raspberry trim with the phoenix on it. Very popular. Sometimes you see it with dragons. Came with a saucer and an under tray, or a little like a little small dish with it. And somebody bought the lot for $367, which is about right. That's about what they're worth these days. If it's a mid-19th century one, then they're worth much more. The price goes way up. Would have been $1,500 to $2,000 if it was much, much older. All right, and then on to this. This was a little bargain of a pot. This is a nice little mid-1800s, 1850 to 1870 teapot, Canton pattern. Very small. The shape, though, is based on a Yongchen example. Originally, this shape was a sort of a popular form, generally speaking, examples from the first half of the 18th century, and it came back. Things never really go anywhere. They just sort of come in and out of fashion occasionally. This was a nice little teapot. $59. Somebody got a good buy, and it wasn't damaged. I thought something maybe when I went back and saw the price, maybe the thing's been broken. And I couldn't find anything really wrong with it. It had a little bit of normal wear here and there, but that was about it. And went for $59. So you can, if you're careful and you don't have a lot of money to spend, you can buy some very nice things for fairly reasonable amounts of money. And then on to this Kangxi period, serrated leaf and vine decorated gu form vase. The form, of course, is based on Shang bronzes going back to the Archaic period, but it always remained popular. It's always this form has been popular in China, it seems, forever. Didn't see too many of them in the Tang Dynasty, but by the other periods, it seemed to come in, because a lot of things that were originally made in bronze, of course, were later made in porcelain or pottery. So it was that exchange of ideas that went along. There's the bottom of it. It looked absolutely fine. Nice snow white, very smooth, dense paste on the foot rim. Might have had maybe a little bit of a repair to the foot there. But regardless, it went for $597. Nice looking example, and it's a small size. Probably was originally in a pair or maybe part of a garniture set, but still a nice example. And you see that pattern too on well, you see it on vases obviously, but also on bowls. Not too often on plates, but on bowls you'll see it around the outside of a bowl. All right, and then over to this, the big kingfisher tiara or headpiece. This was quite an example. It had some losses down in here and here. Kingfisher feathers, you look at them and they fall apart. I mean, they're very susceptible, but they're very elegant. And there's actually, I've mentioned this before, but there is a hair piece museum now in China. It's been there for a while. I had a collection of these that I sold a few years ago. She bought all of them and sent me a very nice note, and terrific lady, and she started her own museum of hair pieces. And it's quite a thing, and she's studying them, and she'll probably be writing a paper on them at some point. But here it is. And it went for $720 and it needed restoration. If this was perfect, it probably would have brought $1,800 to $2,000. All right, and then on to this, another Nonya Straits Peranakan vase. This was sold by Migolari. How tall is it? 13 and a half inches tall. It's not an enormous one, but very nicely decorated. Nice, dense colors. This is the Straits palette that they made for the Straits community. Just very strong, very cheerful, brightly colored, very almost festive looking. That's a thing I like about them. Their silks are the same way too. They're very festive. And this went for $1,516, which isn't a big surprise. That's pretty much what they sell for. And there was this, the Blue de Hue Vietnamese market Chinese over-the-wall bowl with a copper rim on it, which you find often on Blue de Hue pieces made for this market. They often put metal rims on the pieces. So it's one of the little hints. And the dragon is nicely done. The inside of it is plain, so it's not technically. Well, the outside of it is over the wall. These bowls with the dragon coming down. On examples that you'll find that were in China, we sold one ourselves a few weeks ago or a month ago. The rest of the dragon coils down into the interior of the bowl. On these, they don't always do that, and they have them just on the outside. But we still call them over the wall bowls. And this was a good one, and went for $545, which is just about right. They sell typically anywhere from for these later 19th century examples from around 450 up to maybe 650. Something in there. And this one landed right in the sweet spot, right in the middle. It was a good buy. It was a nice thing to buy. And it looked like it was in good shape, which is really great. And then over to this, the transitional wear vase. I talked about this last week, I remember, because I liked it a lot. And with all the fakes and copies of transitional wares floating around, it was really nice to see an authentic one. and the bottom of it, the foot rim is exactly how it should look. The fakes, they also leave them flat and unglazed, but there's a different texture to the glaze that they haven't quite figured out, thankfully. So it makes it easier to spot them. And the density of the clay around the top here, the paste, the porcelain, where it's unglazed, it has a very dense aspect to it, very dense, very compactly done. It's very smooth. It almost looks like chalk, but it's very, very hard, and the same on the base. And it's the same general type of porcelain you see on Kangxi wares, that very dense, hard white porcelain. And you have to handle it, a number of them, to really see what the difference is between these and 19th century examples, but there is a difference. And once you know that difference, it's a great way to help you learn to authenticate things. but you need to get someplace where you can handle them. You got these auctions. If you're anywhere in New York right now, find out what the previews days are at Sotheby's. They've got a big sale of, like I said, 400 lots in one, and some other, and you can go in and you can physically touch and handle these things at the previews. And they're more than happy to talk to you about them. And it's a great way to learn a lot in a short amount of time by going to a preview. All right, and the people there will be more than happy to help you. All right, now, and that doesn't matter where you go. Christie's, Sotheby's, Doyle's, Bonhams, they're all pretty much on it. They do pay attention to their customers. All right, now, in potential customers, over to what's coming up on the newsletter page. Those are the items that were in the newsletter page last week, and these are the items that will be in the newsletter page this week. Right off the bat, this jumped up. This thing is closing in 22 hours. It closes tomorrow. It's up to $2. And these are 19th century vases with covers. Now, one of them has a hairline in it, and I looked at them, and they looked funny to me. And what I realized was the guy that took the pictures looks like he photoshopped, tried to sharpen them or do something with them, or he had a really bad camera. I'm not sure which. But when you look at the images here, the birds look pretty good. When you look at the images here, they look kind of out of it. And I'm not sure why that is. A little hint, if you take your own pictures, you should never have to Photoshop or edit them in any sort of photo editor. If you have good lighting, you angle the light properly, and you have your camera set up properly, the camera will take perfect pictures for you. Otherwise, you're just going to spend all your time editing photos, and you won't get it right, because what looks good edited on one screen will not look good edited on another. I guarantee it. You're going to have screens where what you did will look awful. We see things that are over sharpened all the time, and they look ridiculous. And invest in decent lights. Get a good light tent. Learn your camera settings, and take good pictures to start with. You will, over time, save yourself hours and hours and hours and hours of work just by having that all set up. All right, and there are lighting setups for those of you that sell that you can buy. Have a light table all set up. You literally only turn the lights on in a room without any windows or anything. You don't want windows in a room where you take photographs, unless you want to do some artistic stuff with natural light. But have an area set up that's dark, that you can flick the lights on, and every time you get consistent, perfect lighting. That's what people do. That you'll see them, and they consistently have good photos. That's what they're doing. Christie's, Sotheby's, all the big auction houses, they don't Photoshop their stuff much. They don't make hardly any adjustments. They take the picture, and they use that raw image and just size it. That's all they do, is just trim to size. But anyway, these two vases seem like, right now, they're absolute bargains. I expect they'll go up some. But one of them is damaged, has a crack in it, but nothing else. And the other one, according to the seller, it's perfect. So these should bring $300 to $400 anyway. And right now they're at $2, and they close in less than 24 hours. So if you buy later 19th century Chinese porcelain, look into those. All right, and then on to this very nice Clair de Lune, a big glass, peaking glass vase. And this is a nice one. It's not a modern example. This is not modern from what I'm seeing of it. The color, the way the foot is done, the way it's shaped, the little bevel around the edge, the thick top, and you can see the core of the glass, because these are layers and layers and layers of glass. They build them out, and this is unusually big. It's 13 inches. This is a big vase. Very handsome. Very handsome, and it's not damaged, which is almost a miracle. It's probably a 19th, early to mid-19th century example. It's up to $224. It'll be on the newsletter page. It should get up to around $1,200 to $1,500 by the time it's done. If it goes under $1,200, I think it's a very good buy, because most of these bottle vases aren't that big. They typically maybe 9 or 10 inches tall. All right, and then this lovely little pair of Kutani stem cups. For those of you who buy Kotani, and it's got the boldest Kotani marks I've ever seen on the bottom. They really were proud of these. They put great big marks on them. They are either late Meiji or very early Taisho period, so made between 1900, 1890s, and 1915 or so, 1920 maybe. But very interesting decoration with these gold foil areas here, and there are figures on the inside. And they're just fun. They're fun cups. They're up to $75. They have a single bid of $75 for the pair. One of them has this tiny nick out of the foot on the right-hand side there. You can see it. But they should bring 150, somewhere around there. But I think they're very nice. And then over to this, the bottle vase. This is a copper red Langyao sort of vase. It is a late 19th century one. It is not an 18th century one. There's the bottom of it. Nicely trimmed, but it was probably made around, I don't know, this looks like it was probably made sometime between 1880 and 1910, somewhere in there, roughly. But the glaze is excellent on it. This is the thing this is what you're paying for. This beautiful red glaze that's sort of going down like red fur almost, down over the body. And you'll notice there's a little bit of roughness there, which is normal. During the 18th century, when they made these, they could get the glaze to stop right above the foot, so they rarely had to do any cleanup. But by the end of the 19th century, the later part of the 19th century, for some reason, the glazes got runnier. I don't know if it was they watering them down, trying to get more mileage out of the glazes or whatever, but they often flowed over the feet, and when they took them out of the kilns, they have to chip off and clean off any excess glaze because the vase will never stand up straight. And if you look at the bottom of this, you'll see all these little areas where they cleaned it up. And this is a pretty one, though. It's a nice one. It's up to $235. It is 13 inches tall. And it should, because monochromes right now are still popular, it seems, doing quite well in the market. It should go in the $1,000 to $1,500 range, somewhere around there, I think. Is a safe price range, for those. But it's a good looking one. It's well potted. The shape is nice. And then over to this. This is they have it dated as Shunzi to Kangxi period Chinese blue and white plate of acrylic. This is a very well-known type that were originated in the transitional period. This one to me looks a little bit later, Kangxi or maybe mid 18th century. Here's a picture of the bottom of it. The foot rim and all of that on the bottom of it, and the way the mark is done, the pavilion mark on the bottom, it looks like it's a little later than Shunzi. And if you look at this one, here's one that's a similar example in this pattern that's sold that it was Shunzi, and it was estimated at 10 to 15,000 pounds or $12 to $18,000. Pretty rare bird. And the color, you can tell right away, the way the scales are done. Look at the scales carefully. Look at the shading of the cobalt, and then compare it to compare it to the scales on here, and they look denser and thicker. So I think this is more likely a Qinlong or a late Kangxi example. It should get up. It should in the end. It's got 7 days to go. It should get up to $1,200 to $1,500 regardless, or maybe $2,000. But it's still, I think it's a nice looking plate. There's the mark on the bottom, and but if you compare that, those scales to this is how you look at things. You should, and you compare it to those, you can see the difference. They're much softer. This is a much softer blue. It's not quite so harsh. All right, now this book, John Carswell. If you don't have this book and you like to read about blue and white porcelain, you should own this book. I got it for Christmas back when it first came out. I asked my wife for it because I knew John Carswell. He was I didn't know him terribly well. I'd done business with him in London. He was the head of the Islamic department, and he was involved in the Chinese and the blue and white. And he's a ceramics genius, put it that way. And I was selling something through one of his Islamic sales, is a very rare piece of Iznik, Blue and White Isnick, and I dealt with him, and he was a great guy to deal with, and he was unbelievably knowledgeable, just mind-blowingly bright guy. He retired from Sotheby's a number of years ago. He lives in, last I heard, he was living in Spain. I don't know if he's still with us or not, but he wrote this terrific book. It's a book that he'd been working on for years. He had gone to Syria. He had studied shards. I mean, he's a real academic. And he sort of boiled it all down into this very terrific book. It talks about the interplay of how cobalt influenced the pottery market, the porcelain market, how it was brought from Persia, and how they shipped porcelain as tribute gifts. And it really gets into it during the Yuan dynasty and then onward. And it is, if you read this book and really learn what's in it, you'll know more about Blue and White than 99% of the dealers out there. If you study this carefully, it's really, really good. Really great book. All right. And it's $90. Asian art books are expensive. If you shop on ABE, you might find it for 50 or 60. I don't know. But if you may not, because it's out of print, and out of print books get expensive. Like the famous British Museum, the Ming book that came out for $75 20 years ago, and it's now $1,500, $1,300, $1,400. It's because it's out of print. That's the end of it. So think about that book. Anyway, that's it for the week. Thanks so much for watching. Thank you for subscribing. If you like these, give us a thumbs up, leave a comment. The comments and the thumbs up help us with the algorithm with YouTube. The more thumbs ups they see, it's funny, they don't care about thumbs downs anymore, but thumbs ups and comments, interaction, they love that, and we're building it up. I just noticed the other day we're up to about 16,500 subscribers here, which is great, and it's the bigger the community, the better, I think. So we want to encourage that. All right, and have a great weekend. It's autumn, but the weather's still very nice. It's going to be, I guess, 75 or 80 here this weekend, which is great. And I hope it's going to be very nice where you are. And if you're out west in the heat, I'm apologizing. Tell Governor Newsom you're putting the AC on and you're setting it at 70. Okay, because I guess it's a little warm out there right now. All right, everybody, have a great weekend. Bye-bye.